The texture went on really well. I like the color. I like the overall effect. We've upgraded it a little bit, added floors to all of these, and we're going to make some doors, which I've scratch built a prototype. We're going to do them like that, and they'll be painted and all that, but we'll look at how we build those. So stay with us. In order to facilitate putting on the roof, we're going to take some of these offcuts and we're going to glue them in place inside the walls. And I figured out with the depth of the foam core and everything how far down I wanted to set, so I just made a little gauge. And what you do is just glue that piece, put some glue on it, and then just push it down with the gauge till it's where you want it and fairly even. And then you'll be able to set that roof down in there. And I should note I'm only going to do 3 corners. That way you can push the roof down and it'll tip up and you can take it off. Every house needs a door, so we're going to make some little doors that'll fit in here. And they'll slide right in there like that, and then we can glue them. Of course we'll paint them and everything too, but we're just going to use some more of the mat board that's been treated with the sanding sealer, just like we did with the floor. And we're going to cut some little timbers to go on there, or boards rather. And so let's get to that. The first thing we want to do is take our backing piece and put it in place, leaving enough on the outer edges for us to glue it later when it's done. And then we'll just trace around that perimeter so that we know where to put our boards. And I found that I believe it's 3 stirs cut in half makes 6 boards, which will fit across there just pretty much perfectly. So, and you don't need much space on the side. We're going to PVA that in and it'll hold it. So we'll start cutting. Because these are slightly variable in size, you want to pick out 3 that will fit in that perimeter that we did. So these are a good 3 right here. And I will say that this is a point at which I still actively was casting things in resin, because I would just cast a bunch of these and it would be great, but instead we get to do it the hard way and scratch build a bunch of them. These can be a little fiddly to work with. I just try to measure about a halfway point. And, you know, again, this isn't rocket surgery. We're just trying to set it up so we can split this roughly down the middle. But I'm going to cut these to length first, and then we'll get to splitting. Measure the length, and when I cut these, I just use EMT shears. And it makes a nice, neat cut, and you can kind of use that to cut your other boards. Okay, and now we'll get that set up to split. So I drew a guide on here, but you'll get to where you can do this by eye once you've worked with this stuff for a while. That's the nice thing about having a consistent material, is you'll begin to learn its properties and what it can do. So I just take a corked back ruler, and that kind of holds it in place a little better, and then very, very gently start scoring. You don't want to be too aggressive with this stuff or it just shatters almost. But once you cut through it, now see that's got a little off there. So we'll try another one and maybe do it correctly this time. And I apologize, I still have a cold, so I probably sound a bit off. That's a little better. And if they're a little irregular, that's fine. You can trim those as you need them to make them fit just right. So we'll get a bunch of those done and we'll get ready to put them on, make them into doors. Alright, so we've got our pieces cut out and we're going to get ready to try and assemble this. So I'm just going to use some PVA, which is fairly forgiving. Allows you to reposition things a little more easily. You could super glue these. I'm just not always precise enough for that, so I use PVA just because it allows me kind of a bit more time to do this. Okay, so there's that one, and you just do that 5 more times. And once you get into the flow, it doesn't take too long. Of course, it also helps if you don't have fingers the size of, bratwursts, but learn to make do. And that excess glue you can kind of swipe out of there with the blade of a knife. Anyway, so just do that until your door is basically assembled. Now that that's together, I've cut a couple of these cross members that'll go on there. So we'll glue them on the same way that we glued these to the base. I'll be right back. Alright, so when you glue those on there, you may get that little bead of PVA, and you can leave it or just kind of clean that up a bit with your knife. Sometimes that works really well as like a weld seam or something. Of course not on wood, because how would you weld it? We'll put the other crossbar on. I'll be right back. Alright, so now that that's done, we want to give it a kind of a test fit just to make sure, and that does indeed fit. So now we'll do that a bunch more times and we'll be right back. So we've got all of the roof pieces finished now. All of the buildings are painted. So now let's finish the doors, and that'll really set these off. So what we're going to do is start with kind of a medium darkish gray, this pewter gray. We'll thin that out just a little bit. And we will apply a good coat on there. Not too heavy, but try to get up underneath. Okay, we'll let that dry for a moment. All right, so now that that's dry, we're going to apply a black wash. We're going to use just a little bit of, obviously, black paint, which we will thin out. And then we will use some magic wash, which is half future floor wax, I think they call it clear now maybe, or one of those, and half water. And we're just going to add a little bit here, kind of mix that kind of to taste.
I guess we need a little bit more. And that's the great thing about mixing your own, is if it's not dark enough, just make it a little darker. There we go. We want it to settle down in that wood grain and between the boards and really give it some definition. Okay, so we'll let that dry and we'll go to the next color. Alright, so our first highlight is going to be a light gray color. So we'll add a little bit of that. We're just going to dry brush it on. Try not to smear everything on our palette. And that'll catch all that wood grain and really start to make it pop. It gives it a very aged, dry wood look, which is what we're going for. Houses in the desert. And then lastly, our friend Maple Sugar Tan as our final highlight. We'll add a little bit of that. And that'll give us just a little bit of directionality. And why is the phone ringing? Well, why not? Because I'm trying to film something. But that really finishes it off. The phone's annoying. Gives it a nice texture. Thank you. So once that's done, then we put that in our building, and it really sets that stark white off, and I think gives it a great look. So that's how we make these buildings. Hope you have enjoyed this, and I hope that my friend who's going to get these enjoys these buildings. So thanks for watching, guys.